Welcome back, guys. Okay, this is the creative side of week 12, and this week I have a game, a tool, and an object lesson for you to try to get some of this good doctrine into the hearts and minds of the kids at your house or in your class. But let me walk you through your supplies list first. Our first game is to help you kind of recap these 12 weeks of Old Testament learning. So, of course, I have made a KAHOOT. So if you don't remember this from the D&C year or the Book of Mormon year, I've created a challenge for you that you can play as a family or as a class to kind of just recap all the things that we've learned so far. And I'll break it down for you. Supplies-wise, you don't really need anything other than smartphones. It helps if each of your kids has their own device, but if you don't have that many around, Teams is actually totally doable. So you can play it either direction. Your second one is more of a tool than an object lesson, and this is to talk about priesthood blessings. So I created a printable to help you break down a priesthood blessing and take notes. If you've ever tried to scribble notes about a priesthood blessing as, a baby blessing is happening or a sealing, I thought it would be cool to have some kind of tool to use for that process, and we'll tie it to Jacob and his sons as well. So for that one, you just need the printable, and that's about it. The third one is maybe more involved. Since it's St. Patrick's week, I couldn't resist bringing Blarney stones into our object lesson. So this is going to help us talk about how the Bible and the Book of Mormon work together. That's one of the most important prophecies that's sort of hidden in this week's reading because you have to go into the JST to find it, but we'll talk all through that. Your supplies for it, you need baking soda, vinegar. In fact, you might want a good amount of baking soda. You probably want at least a full box or a bag like this if you can find it. And then you need some pennies, a Sharpie, and then if you want to do prizes, then you need a few prizes on hand. In our family, we don't get too fancy with our prizes. Most of them are like coupons for something, but I'll explain all that later. So baking soda, vinegar, food coloring if you want it, and then some prizes and pennies to have on hand, and that will get you started. If you haven't already scratched off the little circle on your chart, you're going to find a phone underneath. That's because this week is phone fun. My goal here is sometimes I think, especially if you're teaching teenagers, we have a tendency to take away phones, restrict phones. So I'm hoping to inject opportunities to use their phones for good in some of our lessons so that they can incorporate that into the lessons they teach. But one of my favorite ways to do that is to play KAHOOT. Your kids have probably played this 100 times in school. If you've never heard of it before, I guarantee they have. But it's just kind of an online quiz game. So you'll play the game from one device, project it up somewhere. You do need a TV or somewhere where you can cast the quiz up, and then they're actually going to play with their phones. So since we're about 12 weeks into the Old Testament, I thought this would be a good time to break the quarter and say, all right, let's review. So I've created for you a KAHOOT game. I call it, what is it called? Creative Come Follow Me Old Testament Quarter 1. It's a super creative name. And on it, you'll find 30 questions. They're kind of catered to a teenage audience. Since I know a lot of you are seminary teachers or you have a few teenagers, I figured if you have younger kids with your teenagers, you could create teams. You could maybe put a younger kid with a parent. There's lots of different ways to break it up, but I didn't want your kids to get bored if they were older. So I wanted to create some challenge. So as you go into the game, you're going to click the link in the notes and that will open up the game on your computer. Then you want to cast that up to a TV or projector, whatever you have handy. And then your kids will see a pin that pops up on the screen. That's the pin they're going to enter into any browser on their phone. So you don't have to have the app. You don't have to do anything fancy. You just need to put the pin into your browser and it will open up the game and they'll be able to log in, add a creative name, and then play. So as you go through the questions, there's different types of questions. Some are true or false. Some are multiple choice. Some are rearrange the story to get things in the right order. But my hope here is that as you go through those 30 questions, you can take some time to review what we've learned so far. We've gone all through Moses, we've gone all through Abraham, and now all through Genesis. And we've seen some incredible stories. We know incredible characters and what drove them to make the decisions that they did. And I just thought it's a shame to move into Exodus without appreciating how much we've seen so far. So hopefully you have a chance to do that with your family. As they play, if you've never played it before, as they enter their answers, the quicker they can enter their answer, the more points they'll get. So you'll notice that if they can answer fast, they have a bit of an advantage. That's why it helps to have teams that are split into different age groups, so you have a big kid and a little kid on each team. Or if you have time and devices, then everybody can play on their own. But at the end, it'll pronounce a winner, and maybe that one has no dishes for the night or gets a prize of some kind, but hopefully the Kahoot will open up conversation. Remember, the Kahoot's not timed, so you actually have a good minute or two on each question. In fact, you can pause at any time when the scores are showing to break, and if they didn't understand the answer, or if no one got it right, then you can take a second before you click go ahead to the next question and talk it through and help them understand where the holes are so that they, before we move into Exodus, they have a really solid understanding of what we've seen so far. So hopefully you enjoy it and you are successful in your Kahoot, and then you can tell me all about it on the discussion boards. The second object lesson is really more of a tool, but I'm hoping it helps you and your family to appreciate priesthood blessings just a little bit more. I thought, since we saw so many references to blessings, especially in those last few chapters this week, where we see Jacob blessing his grandsons and we see him giving patriarchal blessings to each of the 12 tribes, and you see this sweetness in it, and you're so grateful that it's written down so that we can study it and pay attention to the words. In fact, oftentimes when I either receive a priesthood blessing or hear one given to someone I love, I find myself wishing I had taken better notes. My mom plays this role perfectly. When I was sealed in the temple, she took notes. When I have babies and she's there for the blessing, she writes down notes that she remembers. In fact, when Hannah was married, she wrote down notes. She's so good at it that I always find myself, when she's not there, sort of scrambling. So I thought, what if we had a tool of some kind to help us record blessings better? There are certain blessings that can be audio recorded, that you can actually capture the sound and then, transcribe it, like a patriarchal blessing or a father's blessing. But there are also lots of blessings where we can't do that. Like when you're set apart to a calling, or your child is, and you want to be able to preserve those promises and warnings and blessings. So this is where the printable comes in. You can choose to use this or you can choose to ditch it, but I thought it was cool just to even be able to think it through. So as I was planning this out and deciding what I wanted to include on it, I made simple columns. The thought here is that you wouldn't necessarily write a whole sentence down. That's really hard to do as you're in the moment. But that as you're about to receive a blessing, you would choose someone to be a recorder, and their job is to put bullet points in these areas. So as they hear a blessing offered, some kind of promise offered, that they would put a bullet point about it under blessings. If they hear direct counsel offered about how you can, be more successful, they would put that in the counsel column. If they hear an assurance or a warning, there's areas for those as well. I also left a spot at the bottom for impressions, because one of the things I really loved is when I receive, especially a setting apart blessing, oftentimes it's not the words they say, it's the thoughts that come to my mind about how I can do the calling, or areas that Heavenly Father wants me to adjust in order to do it better. Those impressions are important. So even if you didn't have someone to record it, take a minute to record your impressions and your thoughts. There's also a little area for notes in case if you talk to other people who were there to hear the baby blessing, maybe they can add to what's there. So the idea is that you can kind of keep a better record. I created one that's in color and then one that's more reserved, that's in black and white. So feel free to use whichever one works for you. But my hope here is that we in our family can have a better record of all the ways the priesthood influences our lives, not just with their dad, but with their grandpas, or with, priesthood leaders in church, all their different opportunities to receive a priesthood blessing. I want to be recorded in some way. So I'm hoping that this tool helps me do that. And even if I'm not in the moment, if they just get to go back. In fact, one of the things I thought was really cool was when I went and looked back over my patriarchal blessing, I realized I could actually lay it out this way. I could take my patriarchal blessing, read it, and then write down for myself the assurances I see, the warnings I've received, so that hopefully it's a way to process blessings you've already received and record better the ones that are coming down the road. So I hope it's a tool that helps. Hey guys, your third object lesson involves St. Patrick's Day, because I just couldn't resist. You saw me, I did spiders at Halloween and gifts at Christmas. You can't resist tying scripture study and the holidays all together. So for this object lesson, you'll be making Blarney stones. If you haven't seen these, I invented these maybe, 3 or 4 years ago to add some fun to what is kind of an ordinary, boring holiday at our house. So we do this tradition. basically, this is a baking soda rock that you're going to make that they will put in vinegar, and inside there is a token to a prize. That's kind of the idea behind Blarney stones, but we're going to tie it to the scriptures. My hope is that by creating this fun object lesson, you'll actually have an excuse to talk about Joseph Smith's translations at the very end of Genesis 50. Again, it's part of the reading this week, but it's sort of buried, so don't miss it. So at the very end, Joseph Smith gives us 11 extra verses that talk about the prophecies of Joseph. We should see Joseph in Egypt the same way we see Isaac and Jacob and Abraham. He was a mighty prophet and a seer. So he interacted with God the same way his ancestors did. He saw things afar off. Like he sees Moses. All these are in the notes, by the way. He sees Moses, who will 200 and some odd years in the future save his people and bring them back to Canaan. He sees the Book of Mormon and the Bible working together. In fact, I love the phrase he uses. He talks about them growing up together. And so as we learn how to use them this year, as we're diving into the Bible, as much as we ache to be in the Book of Mormon all the time, we have to appreciate how these two books work together. If you look in the key verse, I can't remember which one it is. It's in the notes, but as you look at the verse in the Joseph Smith translation, he says, as these two books grow together, they will confound false doctrines. They will lay down contentions. They'll establish peace among people. They'll bring these people to a knowledge of their fathers, and they will bring them to a knowledge of covenants. That is a pretty remarkable promise from a prophet who lived thousands and thousands of years ago. He also testifies about Joseph coming, how his name will be Joseph. It's something that will sound familiar because we also see it in the Book of Mormon when Lehi's talking to his son Joseph about how a Joseph will come. Those are prophecies that he learned from Joseph in Egypt. So you kind of see it all tied together. In fact, I think part of the goal of Come Follow Me is to help us weave all these different scriptures together to form this impenetrable web of testimony for our kids. And the reason I decided to make this object lesson go with it is to give you an excuse to talk about it. So the principle behind this object lesson is that there are two components that are working together, and when they work together, you get something better out of it. So in this case, it's the baking soda and the vinegar. For me, I decided that the rocks represent the Bible and the vinegar represents the Book of Mormon. And as they come together, as they grow together, they open up truth. We see a new understanding. It's not that either of them are faulty without it. It's that as we combine them, something is exposed. Truth is brought to the surface. So this is kind of how you set up your Blarney stones. Basically, you're going to take, depending on how many you want to make. For me, I made, 6 or 7 Blarney stones, and I used about a cup of baking soda, maybe a cup and a half. And then you want to add colored water to it. If you want your Blarney stones to be green, you want to color your water green. For us, we've done them gray. I've done some that are purple. You can kind of pick whatever you want. If you want them to look more stony, for lack of a better word, you want to add poppy seeds in, or sand if you have that handy. But I added maybe 2 tablespoons of poppy seeds into my baking soda, and then you're going to pour your colored water in. You're going to add enough water that you start to get the consistency of kinetic sand. So it's kind of a smooth, hard sand. You really can't overdo it. If you get too much water, it'll just be a little bit goopier, but you're going to dry them out anyway. So once you get about a kinetic sand consistency, you're going to take one of your numbered coins. So for me, I just use pennies or tokens if I have those on hand, and I'll write a number on each penny. So in our family, if we had 6 kids, I would have numbers 1 through 6 on 6 pennies. And you're going to hide these inside the sand. Then you form your stone around the penny, so that basically inside each one of these stones, you would find a numbered penny. And then on St. Patrick's Day, when you teach this lesson, you're going to let your kids drop it into the vinegar. And then you'll talk about, their prize. So each numbered coin correlates to a numbered bag on the counter that has some kind of prize inside. For us, some of the most popular have been like a ticket that says you get a 1-hour curfew extension. My teenagers love that one. I've also done tickets that say like you get extra tech time on your phone, or you get a free pass out of Saturday chores. Those kind of things work really well in our family. But if you wanted to do it for a whole class, you could come up with, little trinkets or prizes to put in the bags. But as they explode their Blarney stones and they get their prize, you can also talk about the connection we have with Joseph Smith and with Joseph in Egypt, that through this revelation, he taught us that the Book of Mormon and the Bible are independently wonderful. They really are. Like, especially as we go back into the New Testament and see the life of Christ again, there's power in both of those books. Just like there's power in the baking soda and there's power in the vinegar separately. But when they combine together, they bring something that we can't find otherwise. In fact, there's a little 1-minute video in the notes from President Nelson that talks about this very idea that we get a full picture of Jesus Christ as we let those two works combine together. And hopefully this object lesson, although it's fun and entertaining, hopefully will help you teach that sweet principle as well. If you need more help on how to walk it through or how to teach it, you can find all of that in the notes, but I hope you enjoy it. Woo, we made it. All right, guys, that's it for week 12. I hope you enjoy the Kahoot. Give it a shot. I promise it will help bring a lot of happy thoughts to your mind. I was surprised at how much my kids actually remembered. In fact, I made them play it twice, and by the time they would played it 2 times, they really remembered. So I hope you play the Kahoot. Enjoy the blessing printable, and of course, enjoy the Blarney stones. It's just a way to inject a little bit of fun and adventure into your St. Patrick's Day, and also tuck in a little bit of scripture along the way. So I hope you love it. If you have problems or questions, you can always post that on the discussion boards, or you can join me in the Instagram Live. That's Monday, 2 o'clock, where I'll pop on for 30, 40 minutes and kind of go over the insights. It's another place that you can go if you have a friend or a family member who wants to kind of see what the course is like. The Instagram Live is a good way for them to get a feel for it without having to jump all the way in. So hopefully that will help you. If you want to join me on the live, if you can't catch it live, Monday at 2 o'clock Mountain Time, you can always find it in my IGTV. I save it there for about a week and then I delete it. So hopefully you can find it in one of those places. But otherwise, enjoy your week. And if you get a chance, post pictures. Even if you just send them to me in a direct message on Instagram, I would love to see how your Blarney stones go and how your Kahoot goes. I just hope you enjoy the scriptures this week, because I promise you, as you jump into next week, you're going to see this whole new era of the Bible open up. So tie this one off in a neat little bow and then come back ready for Exodus. All right, you guys, enjoy your week. I'll see you on Monday.